Welcome back, my fellow SharePoint developers. In this video, we're going to be working on the hot reload option. I know that I had spoken about it several times in other videos. So the first thing that I want to do is make a little bit of a modification on what we initially did for the boilerplate app. Right now, what's happening is, if you look at here on line 27, so we're going to change this base URL to be a more dynamic option. We're going to start by creating the current URL, and this is going to be a string. And it's going to be window.location.href. The URL set, and that's going to be a string. We'll say const base URL is equal to the URL we're going to be setting. Obviously, you still got an error because it hasn't been assigned, but we're going to assign it here shortly. If current URL dot includes, and it's going to have to include the verbiage site pages. If it includes the site pages, then what we want to do is we want to set URL set to current URL dot split, and we're going to split it at the string site pages. And again, the split method, what it does is it splits your string and turns it into an array. So we want to get the first part of that array, meaning the beginning. Else if current URL dot includes, and the next thing we're going to be looking for is site assets. Then we want to set that URL to current URL dot split slash site assets slash, and we again want to return the first portion of that split. And finally, if none of those are matching, you would want to throw an error. And so the error, you can make it say, invalid URL. And so that will make the URL more dynamic, and you won't have to worry about whether you can put this inside a content or web part, or if you can just use it as a full site page. So what we want to do now that we've made those changes is make a copy of the original. So we're going to type cp-r, and the original is boilerplate app, and the new one is going to be called boilerplate app hot reload. So now that we have that version that's open in the integrated terminal, so that we can use that one instead of the old one, we go ahead and go open the package.json file. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to load a couple of development dependencies so that we can set up the hot reload option. So let's do that. You're going to type in npm I -D for development dependency. And the first one we're going to need is concurrently. The next one is going to be sp-rest-proxy. Once they've been installed, we're going to add a couple of things to our scripts. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a proxy script. Type in proxy, and our proxy script is going to basically run Node, and it's going to run Node from a script that we're going to be adding here shortly called API server.js. And the next script that we're going to be adding is going to be called start servers. So concurrently, we can run two servers. So we're going to run concurrently, and we're going to pass it the kill others command, so that if there's any other servers running, it'll kill them. And then we're going to escape, because we're going to need to escape this double quote npm run proxy. And once again, we escape the quote. And then at the same time, we're going to be running npm run start, which obviously is going to start our development server. So that's going to run both servers, the proxy that's going to redirect your calls from your current local node server to the SharePoint site. Now here at the very bottom, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a proxy address. Anything that you run locally is going to run on IP address 127.0.0.1, And the port that we're going to be using is 8081. The next thing you're going to do is we're going to add a file to the root source. So here at the root, we're going to right click on the name so we can create a new file. And the new file is going to be called API server.js. Now in this API server.js, this is where we're going to basically set up our REST proxy. So let's create a const called REST proxy. And that is going to be setting up an import, which is going to import the sp-rest-proxy. And we're going to set up a settings object. And inside of our settings object, we want to set up a configuration path. And our configuration path, let's put that in the root. And we're going to create, that configuration is going to create a private.json file. And we're going to put our port 8081. Now that you have your settings object, we can create a const for the REST proxy. Make sure that we pass in the settings object, and we're going to serve the REST proxy. That's it. That's all you have to do to set up your script that's going to start your proxy server. Once we've completed this portion, we're going to go back to our package.json, and we're going to run npm run proxy. Once you run npm run proxy, it's going to ask you for some initial settings. So the first setting is going to be your SharePoint URL. Copy it from our SharePoint site. You're going to see that it's going to ask you for the authentication strategy. For the authentication strategy, just select user credentials if you're using SharePoint Online. Next thing it's going to ask you is for your username. So go ahead and type in your username. Mine's that. And then it's going to ask you for a password. And it's going to say that your proxy is now running on localhost 8081. Click on it, and to test it that it is working with the current site URL and your password and everything is good, just type in _API/web and leave it as a GET request and send the HTTP request. Now, if you get an error, like a 404 or another error, then clearly there's something wrong and you don't have access to that proxy server. But if you see an object that gives you the information of the web, then you're all set. You're good to go. You've done everything correctly up to this point. You can close that off, go back and terminate this job. Okay, so now that that's been set up, you'll notice that you now have a config file here that brings in your information. So open the utility folder and select use spp&p.ts file that we created, and we're going to add yet another configuration option or another dynamic option here. So to do that, let's create another else if, and inside our conditional, we're going to be doing a check for current URL that includes, and we're going to be looking for the word localhost. So if it includes localhost, we're going to create a const called local URL, and it's going to be of type string, and it's going to be using the string for your local server, in this case your proxy server. So we're going to type in localhost, and it's going to be port 8081, and it's going to be fooling it into thinking it's actually the SharePoint site, but it's going to be your proxy. So now that you have that, we're going to import the from the config folder. We're going to use the private.json file. We're going to bring that in because we need to bring in that URL that you put in there for your SharePoint site. So you don't have to retype it, it'll automatically do it for you. So we're creating a sub URL, and in our sub URL is going to be of type string. And so we're going to get the config information from our JSON, and we're going to get the site URL that's in that configuration file. And then we're going to split that at the word sites, and we're going to return the latter part of that because we're trying to get the SharePoint site URL. And finally, we're going to set this up to set our URL set local URL / the sub URL So that's going to combine the sub URL, and then we're going to split it again. The reason being is because we may have a bunch of other trailing information and we don't need that. We just need the up to that site name, and that's it. We don't need anything else. Now we can save it. And this is going to set us up to be able to run our local host and at the same time run our applications. Now let's run npm run start servers. And when you run start servers, it's going to open your application on localhost 8081 for your REST proxy, and it's going to open your development server at the same time. And look at that. I can now do hot reload. If I go to my app TSX, instead of saying welcome, we can say hello. And just so that you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to put this to the side, and we're going to put them side by side. So as soon as I save it, isn't that awesome? So now you have hot reload. It's the ability to be able to run your development server and connect through a proxy, so you can do all of your development without having to actually constantly be loading files. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I'd like to thank you for coding with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching. If you find this video helpful, give it a like. If you think someone else can benefit from it, please share it. If you have any questions, please post it in the comments and subscribe. It's free for you, and it really helps me out. Finally, if you can, go ahead and click on that bell icon to get notified when the next video is added.